Good morning, I'm here in my studio in Redcar, about to start another day. This is a typical day for me and always starts with at least 3 cups of tea to get me going. Finish my porridge and on to my first task is to head off down to my mailbox, which is on the floor below. I don't do this every day because I don't get very much mail, as you can see. Nothing in there. So head back on up to my studio. Here we go. Whenever I get back from a show, I always unload Dario and dump everything in my studio, and then I have to go and park Dario a little bit further away. And sometimes I just give up and go home. So I've come back to face this mess, which I need to sort out today. I think it's going to take me a while. When I'm taking my bolts of fabric to a show, I use these big IKEA bags because they're the perfect size to put the fabric in. And I used to take 16 of them to shows, but I just found it was a bit pointless really. So now I've limited it to 8. So I take 8 bags of bolts of fabric, and it's still a lot. When I started my business, I didn't realise what a physical job it would be, travelling around to different quilt shows and selling my fabric. It really is a lot of lifting, and I have to build up shelves and drive my van all over the place. In the last year, I've driven, I think, getting on for 20,000 miles, 30,000 miles, an awful lot. And that's just me driving my little van, Dario Doblo. Oh, this is a quilt I made called Apron Strings. It's just meant to use up scraps, and I think it's really effective. Like any business, you have to figure out what works, and I sell a lot of fat quarters when I'm at shows, and finding the best way to display them. It's been really tricky, but eventually I've settled on these little plastic divider trays, which I got from Really Useful Box. I've tried all sorts of things, wicker baskets, plastic tubs, and even recycled cardboard trays. But those little divider trays are the best ones, I think, because I can stack them up and they keep all my fat quarters safe. I'm really becoming aware of how important sustainability is now, and I'm working to try and make my business sustainable. Here at the Palace Hub, we have separate recycling bins, so I'm recycling all my cardboard boxes and the inners that I use. There's a lot of tape on this one, so I hope it will be okay with the recyclers. I've also moved away from the plastic mailing bags that I used to use, even though they were really pretty, and I've gone on to cardboard boxes now. Bubble wrap I do use, but I tend to use whatever's been sent to me. I save it and reuse it, and even any boxes that are useful for sending out my orders, I do keep those and reuse those as well. And when I'm at shows, I've gone over to paper bags too, because I've noticed my customers always say to me they only want a bag if it's paper. So things are moving forward, I think. Having said that, here I am using a plastic bag for my rubbish. Oh well, got a lot to learn, I suppose. I find it a bit of a challenge pricing my fat quarters when I'm at quilt shows, because in the past I've always had them all at the same price, but now I have fabric that is quite differently priced, and I can't really afford to do that, and I don't want to mark up the cheaper ones to the same price as the more expensive fabric. So I have different containers. These ones in the green ones are my Laurie Holt, which you know I'm a fan of Laurie Holt's designs. So I've separated those out so they're a different price to my normal fat quarters when you're at a show. Obviously on my website then everything's priced individually and it's easier to see. Oh, these Aurifil thread storage boxes are really popular, and I've just had a new delivery of them along with my Aurifil thread there. See what we've got. I think this time I ordered a whole batch of 50 weight thread, which is the one that I sell the most of. But I am branching out into different weights of thread. But for me, it's a cost issue. I can't afford to place massive orders, so I have to buy them a little bit at a time. So I'm always open to suggestions. If there's a particular colour or thread weight or size that you want, just let me know in the comments and I'll add it to my next order, because it's really hard trying to second guess what people want. And invariably, people will come and ask for a green, and I might have every green but the one they want. It's never right. So don't be afraid to tell me, please could you order this, and I'll try and get it on my next order if it's at all possible. I do like doing battle with these boxes. Very satisfying. So these are my photographic backgrounds, which I spread them out on my desk and I use them for overhead shots of my product. They've been brilliant. They're all different shades, so I've made a lot of use of those, and you'll probably see them on Instagram. And this box here was made for me by my dad, and it contains my spool racks for my Aurifil threads. It's so that I can transport them to shows without them all getting bashed, because the little pins kept breaking off. So Dad made this box for me, and I can fit some spools of thread in it as well. And once I've taken the racks out, it makes a useful display stand too.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my...
These little racks are really good for displaying your threads. I got one of mine from Aurifil, and I think I picked up the other two from Hobbycraft online, but I've seen them in lots of other places, and you can quite often get them at quilt shows. But they hold 60 large spools of Aurifil thread, which is brilliant, and they look nice as well on the display. I always unpack the spools of thread onto the little stands, even though I know I'll have to pack them up again when I go to the next show. But it makes it easier for me to see what I've got in stock. And when customers come in, as they do sometimes, customers pop in to see me, then it look nice for them to choose their threads from as well. And I do think they just look nice in the studio. This time I've decided to do one stand of coloured thread and one stand of neutral thread. With Aurifil, they use a different coloured inner so that you can tell the weight of the thread. And these have all got orange inners, which means that they're 50 weight thread. And I always think of 50 weight thread as being your everyday go-to thread. It's the one I use the most, and it's the one I sell the most of as well. And I use it for piecing, I use it for quilt tops, I use it for just general sewing. There is a move, some people quite like to use 40 weight for quilt tops now because the stitches perhaps are 40 weight's a little bit thicker. It's only slightly, but the stitches look a bit more defined on your quilt top with 40 weight. So I have some 40 weight as well, and that has a green inner. But if you see me at a show, please ask me to explain, because I've got examples of all the different threads so you can see. And sometimes I have the booklets, but they didn't send me any this time. And I forgot to ask, I think. But Aurifil have a really useful booklet which explains all the thread weights and what needle size you need to use and what you need in your bobbin. But with the 50 weight, I always use 50 weight on my machine and 50 weight on my bobbin, and it works a treat. So I'm on to the next stand, and this one's going to be for my neutral threads. My bestseller, and I think it's the bestseller for Aurifil as well, it's called Dove Grey, and a lot of you are probably familiar with it. It's like a very light silvery grey, and it's number 2600. That is the thread that I sell 3 times more of than any other thread, but it just blends in so lovely with everything. It really disappears. It's a lovely thread to use. So use that one, and the one, what's it called, 2000? Yes, I think it's 2000. It's like a creamy beigey cream. I use that one for warmer colours, and they're my 2 main threads that I use. But Aurifil do such lovely colours, it's a shame not to use more of them really. Oh, this is the Dove Grey, the 2600. Such a useful colour. And here you can see what I mean by the different coloured inners, the sort of spools that Aurifil use. Because in my hand here, I've got the green inner, and that's the 40 weight. So you can see, you can easily check when you're buying which weight you've got, because the print on the end of the label is really small. So I'm collecting up all my recycling and my rubbish. I'm going to have to make a trip down to the bins. And I hate going down to the bins because they're in a cage outside. We have to go into reception and get the key, and it's cold and the bin gate is really stiff, and I can never relock it again, and it always makes me traumatized. And I always have to ask Dave, the caretaker, to come and do it for me. So I put off going to the bins as much as I can, but I think after this tidy up, I'm going to have to be brave and make my way down to the bin store. Now this thing is actually a clothes display rack. I bought it quite a few years ago when I was heading up to a show in Glasgow, and I didn't have anything to hang my panels on, and it cost me £50. But I have literally made my money back on this. It's always at shows and it's always got people crowding around it looking at the panels. It displays them really well because of the descending spiral. It was quite heavy though. It's quite an effort to move it. Now, I'm trying not to drink quite so much tea. As I said before, I love my tea, so I've gone on to fruit teas in the afternoon now. And I find I like the berry ones the best. So I'm having a little tea break with some nice fruit tea. I think my daughter bought me this one. Oh, now I'm found out. Egg mayonnaise in a baguette. Still, I better go and do the washing up. If you're a regular follower of me, you may know that sadly last year I lost my mum, and some of you might have seen her when you've come to various quilt shows because she's come to quite a lot with me. But I keep bringing things back from her house as we're clearing it to put in my studio. So that tin that I was just cleaning, that's one of hers. And I'm just bringing odd little bits back. So she's sort of still here with me in the studio. Oh, that's the end of my tidying up. And the weekend following this, I'm at a show. Not really a show, it's called a Makers Market, and it's in the House of Foliage on Redcar High Street. And I'm not sure what sort of customers will be there. I don't think there'll really be sewing and quilting customers, but it's just a way to promote local businesses. So I had the idea to make some little handmade cards with my fabric in, so that people who didn't sew might have something to buy. So I decided to get a few nice fabrics ready so that I can put them into the cards. I love these ones. They're by a designer called Tasha Noel, and they're called Quilt Fair, and they're from Riley Blake. I just thought they looked really nice together. I cut the fabrics into 2.5-inch strips, and I'm sewing them together with the idea of making a sort of patchwork to put in the cards. I'm very optimistic. It didn't really work very well, if I'm honest, but I'll give anything a go. I think on my sewing table you can see I've got a bright pink seaside bucket. There's plenty of those to buy in Redcar. But I got this idea from my quilt group, Endeavour Quilters, where they use them as little bins on the table, because you've always got bits of thread and odds and ends that you've cut off and trimmed from your fabric. So I use this as my sort of table bin, and I put all the scraps in it and then tip them into the big bin. So one Christmas, I asked Mr. Oakapple for a hot glue gun, and I think he regrets the day he ever bought that hot glue gun, because I love it. And once I get it fired up, I sort of glue everything inside, which is pretty much what I did here with my cards. And I think that's why they didn't work, because they had quite a lot of glue in them. But I had a really nice, pleasant afternoon sticking and gluing. I gave up on the idea of the patchwork because I found it really hard to get it nice and straight. So I went for sort of fussy cutting nice bits of my fabric. I didn't think they looked too bad. And it's time to get onto some orders now. I got together a few bits that I thought might work for my event at the weekend, so priced all my cards and everything up, and I've left my studio looking a little bit tidier at last, starting to look more like somewhere I can actually work. My chicken cushion, I love that one. I made this monstera leaf from a drawing from Mr. Oakapple, so I was planning to take that with me to the House of Foliage because I thought it would work for plant people, but I forgot to take it, so it's still there in my studio. And well, it's home time now and it's lights out. Thank you for watching my small business diary, I suppose, of my day in the life. I hope you've enjoyed keeping me company, and I'll see you next time.